You may or may not have noticed that I've been now doing these podcasts as videos. So I've set myself this challenge to film them. Also because I think it's going to give me extra content and it will just save me time. But whenever I film podcasts, I always feel like they aren't as good because I'm conscious that the camera's there. I've thought about the setup much more. I'm trying to create a cozy atmosphere right now. Like me and you, we're having a chat, we're sitting down, we're chilling together. I've got a blanket, I've got my slippers on, and I've got these nice lights on. And to be fair, the way I've prepped for this episode, I would have liked to have prepped for it better because it's getting kind of dark and the lighting's not great. But we are here, we're doing the video, and we're going to see what happens. The other thing with video is if I go on a tangent, I'm much more likely to go on tangents and not articulate myself that well, because when I'm recording normally, I'll just have my notes and I'm like, oh, I know exactly what I want to say. And I don't know, it's something in my head where I always notice that when I'm not being filmed, that is when I will talk the best when I'm not filming myself. And the moment a camera comes on, my words just don't really come out how they usually come out. And it's a bit of a ride. We're on a journey. Who knows what's going to happen? Sometimes I don't even know what I'm saying. So today's episode 99. We are going to go through 99, by the way. 99. We're nearly at 100. It's going to be a big one. I don't know what I'm going to do, but it will be big. You can probably tell from today's title, so we are going to be talking about emotional eating. To manage your expectations, if you struggle with this or ever have done or feel like you will in the future, all you need is this episode. And what I mean by that is I'm going to give you some tangible tips you can implement straight away for free, but also some really important self-awareness questions, prompts to ask yourself that will help identify what kind of tools you need, because there's different types of emotional overeating. And because it's a little bit of a taboo subject, people feel embarrassed about it, they feel ashamed, they feel like maybe you might not fully want to say how much you do it or what happens when it does. And I get it, especially me working in the fitness industry. I, if anything, feel even a bit more embarrassed. Should I say that? I don't know if that's the right word. Because it's like I have this expectation of, oh, you must eat a certain way all the time, which is obviously not true because I am also a human being. So that's why I think it's especially important to talk about, because if we don't manage things like this, it can spiral and it can end up affecting, it's not even just how you physically look or your weight, but it could also be how you feel about yourself, how you then show up at work, around others, your confidence, and a whole bunch of things. So before we get into the tools, and yes, I have my notes because we want to get to the point, and we know that with notes, I'm more likely to do that. Before I am actually going to talk about the tools, what am I going to get into first? It's this. It's important that you are aware or you notice when emotional overeating happens. And so you have an idea. I will typically, like some examples of when I've emotionally overate. It actually happened recently when I was a little bit anxious about something. I was overthinking it quite a bit. And I don't know if you've ever had it when your thoughts are taken up by something so much that you almost just sort of disregard other things. So it could be like you disregard having lunch, or you even disregard looking after yourself in certain ways that aren't as obvious. So things like, I'm going to sleep for a certain amount of time, or I'm going to see people that I love that are important to me on weekends, so I have that recharge and reset, and I don't just go straight into another week of work, projects, that kind of thing. And usually I can always tell when I've not looked after myself properly because I'm more likely to overeat. So when I've not looked after my own energy, my mental headspace, socially, so if I've spent time with people I care about, I call it creative switch off time. So it can be with friends, but it can also be just doing random activities that help me switch off. That's nothing to do with work. So even if it's obviously going for a walk is our number one obvious one, but it could also even be listening to music, cleaning my house, or having a bath, having a longer shower where I'm not just rushing and I'm actually being present and enjoying and taking pleasure in the things that I can see, feel, touch, hear that are around me. Because that connects me to, that sounds really woo-woo for a second, it sounded like it connects me to my energy. But it genuinely does connect me back to how I want to feel, and it makes me aware of the things I'm experiencing and the emotions I'm experiencing. So when I'm not doing that, I'm more likely to overeat. And this happened, was it this week or last week? I can't remember the exact day. I hadn't really been looking after that. I'd also haven't been doing things that I enjoy specifically. So my enjoyment came from food. And this is always a big sign for me personally, of when I've not done things that interest me, that I'm looking forward to, that I'm excited about, and not made effort to do those things. I will often look to food as like my little break, or my little indulgence or pleasure or enjoyment of the day. And I often think that there's so many things that we can enjoy and we can appreciate and love and get excited by. If my next meal is the only thing that I'm looking forward to in my day, that's a pretty big sign that some things need to change. Or I need to at least, either I'm not aware of something, or I'm unconsciously just too wrapped up in something in my own head to even notice all these things that I do value, that I love. So that was happening. We had that situation going on, and I'm usually by myself. So Harry has been at work and had work events for a lot of nights in a row, this week in particular. So when I've got a mixture of all those things, oh, and of course, the very clear one for me, when I've got an endometriosis flare up. So endometriosis, I had surgery for it. Was it last year? Maybe the year before. But it's a chronic condition, so it doesn't just go away. You can manage symptoms, but it will never fully go away. So when I've got a particularly bad endometriosis flare up, if my back pain is bad, if I'm by myself and I haven't looked after my own energy, and I'm overthinking things typically to do with work, that's a recipe for overeating for me. And I really noticed that it is something that I used to feel very ashamed by. And even in front of Harry, I would almost get a bit embarrassed to do it in front of other people. So when I'm by myself, it's almost like I would still judge myself for it, but it felt like it was more likely to happen. And then but funnily enough, when I'm by myself, I tend to really beat myself up about it much more, because it's almost like this hidden secret that I haven't told anyone. And this is one of the reasons why I really want to talk about this, and I encourage people I work with to talk about this. Whenever you keep something to yourself and you carry this guilt and shame and you don't tell anyone about it, it becomes a bigger story and bigger problem in your head. And the resentment builds, the embarrassment builds. But when you speak about it with someone else and you're able to bounce ideas off someone, you often find that you can think about things a little bit more logically, a little bit more the zoomed out perspective. And 6 times out of 10, 9 times out of 10, that was a very precise number, 6.5 times out of 10. But often the person you speak to, they will then go, do you know what? I've actually also felt like that. And I experienced a part in my life when I did feel that way. And then all of a sudden, this big thing that had all this shame and embarrassment, and oh my God, it was such a big problem I couldn't tell anyone about, and I feel awful about it. You're like, oh, it actually happens to other people. And oh, this is how they got over it. And oh, actually, if there's nothing physically wrong with me, I probably just need to do X, Y, Z, and this would feel way better. So that's why that is really important. So what am I getting at here? This happened to me this week, and I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do about it now. So first things first, I'm going to ask myself a set of questions, and it's alluding to what we've just been talking about. Something that I've written down here, which I really want to say, and I don't want to make sure I don't forget to say, is that if you try and cover this up with tips that we might talk about today in this episode, it's like a plaster on a wound that will keep bleeding. You can hear all the ideas that you want, but if the same thing keeps happening, you haven't learned anything, nothing changes. So if nothing changes, you keep overeating, you keep noticing you're in the same cycle, it's no longer about a little tip now. It's probably going to take a little bit more work, and these questions are going to help you to unravel that work and get closer to no longer overeat, and particularly emotional overeating. Number one, so these are going to be noticing questions that I want you to ask yourself, and it's what I ask myself. I'm going to just write down or note what was actually happening at the time. What was I doing? Where was I? Who was I with? This is a good one. Like I said, I was by myself. That's a key thing for me. How did you feel, and where were you? These questions will reveal patterns, and they'll reveal times for you that are almost moments in your week or your day that you can then prepare for and you can be ready for. So for example, if it is typically on a Friday night when you've just got home from work and you've had a super long week, you're so tired, you had to stay late, you had to do this thing, and you're like, oh, Friday nights is finally, I get this little bit of time to myself. And that's when the overeating happens. That's when you feel compelled to order XYZ. That's when it's not just a little snack and actually it turns into a lot of snacks. And what this will help you to do is go, if I know it typically happens on a weekend or a Friday or whenever it is, you can then put a tool or a plan in place for that time specifically. Because if not, it's pretty hard to just sort of go, well, randomly, I just overeat. I just emotionally overeat all the time. Well, it's probably not all the time, but when does it happen? When do you feel the worst? When do you notice like, oh, this is probably a little bit of a problem and it's no longer like a one-off thing? When we've highlighted that, we can then address it and it will actually show us. This is something that I always say to people I work with. Noticing what's happening, when it happened, who you were with, what you were doing, how you were feeling, even if it's something that was bad, is so useful to you. Or I say quote unquote bad. Say if it was something you felt like you failed at, you did something wrong. Looking at that and going, what happened there? Does that happen always at that time? How was I feeling? What did I just do? Because that will often shine a torch onto what tools would work best for you. And it can often go, you know what? It's actually on Fridays when this happens after work, when I'm tired, when I haven't done XYZ. Okay, I know that I probably need to slot in some kind of tool there or something, whether it will help me feel good or some kind of mindful exercise. So that's why failing and doing things wrong is really good. It can be really good and useful to us, and it can show us what we need to work on. So after you've asked yourself those questions, the next part is, I would not work with someone on emotional overeating until I found this next part out. So this is you need to know this because it can completely change the approach you might have. Will it? It will. Doesn't mean the things that we're going to talk about aren't useful, but it will help again to show you what kind of action you need to take so that you can solve this problem for yourself. So the next thing, was this a mindless incident? Simple, let's say, and this has actually happened to me, if I have a lot of coffee, it blunts your hunger. I can get super zoned out and then I'll go like 8 hours without eating and I'm like, oh, I didn't notice I was hungry. But then when I'm around food in the evenings and I'm tired and I'm no longer really feeling that kind of buzz from coffee, then suddenly I want to eat everything. And that isn't because there's something wrong with me. It's simply because I didn't eat for 8 hours. I sort of masked my hunger with coffee and now all of a sudden I am hungry. So simple tweaks like that. That could be like a mindless little, there's not too much emotion behind it. And it's more a simple, tangible fix of I might just set a reminder at 2 p.m. to have this little snack. And even if you're busy, I used to be very soft about the whole I'm busy reasoning. And I've changed my stance on that because I know, and I've worked with very busy people, and we're talking people who work 10 hours, who have 3 young children, no childcare, people who I would train at 6 a.m. in the gym, people who would have a lot of other people relying on them, caring for other people, commute, doing all the things in a day, and they would still be able to find time to train, be able to find time to eat in a certain way. Even if it meant that they needed to, it's not even about, I know some people might take that the wrong way, but sometimes it's just that you're not aware of something that can make your life so much more easier or faster, or just a way to manage your priorities and your time that you haven't seen yet. And it's not like, oh, this is saying, oh, you're just, I really don't get on with the whole, well, they're just lazy and they just don't want it bad enough. Or actually, maybe they're not aware of the tools that are available to them. And if you did have that, it would be a whole different thing. But that's a conversation for another story. See, this is why filming the podcast will make me go on tangent, because now I'm like, where was I going with this? So when people are busy, and say when you're not aware of, there was just maybe one tweak you could have made in your day, if you had a reminder on your phone, and it could have literally just been, I'm going to have a protein shake. I'm going to have a snack. I'm going to buy some food from a supermarket, keep it at the office, keep it in my fridge, so that even if I don't have time, I can quickly snack on something whilst I'm on a call. And that way I'm not getting to dinner completely starving and wondering why I'm overeating. So it doesn't need to be these things that take forever where you're batch cooking absolutely everything. So and that's one reasoning or one case of emotional overeating or overeating. And then there's this next thing, and I really want you to notice which one you are, because it's going to be crucial information for you to know. The next thing is this a regular coping mechanism that may need more work than just, I need to remember to eat lunch. I need to set a reminder to drink my protein shake. Because if it's something that happens every single day, week, although these tools we're going to talk about will help, the second, the one I've just gone over, it needs a bit more practice. It's going to need some trial and error. It might need some deeper work. There might be some stuff that will take longer to solve and uncover. And I don't want you, I've written down this, and if you get anything from this episode, I don't want you to feel like, oh, I'll just use this tool and instantly I'll never emotionally overeat again. If you're that second person where it's a regular coping mechanism, it's your only vice and it's the only way that you feel like you can switch off and enjoy things, we're getting into the territory of this isn't going to be I'll just do this tip and it will disappear. And I'm saying that because I don't want you to try the tool, get disheartened, still keep overeating. That's not a good combo. You're not going to feel good about yourself. So it's more me managing expectations of, I'd rather let you know, by the way, yes, this will take some work and it will take some time if it's something that you regularly use as your vice. And no shame in that also, in anything we talk about, but particularly with vices. So I often think that everyone has their vices, whether it is food, alcohol, drugs, sex, any other addictions, smoking. We have our little things that we like it in a certain way. It gives us a certain pleasure and we like those things. And I've noticed much more recently, and I don't know why this has changed, but I've noticed that food has become a bigger vice for me than what it has in the past. I'm thinking about it a bit more. And to be fair, now that I'm no longer doing the hours that I was, where I was not sleeping or getting up at 3, 4, 5, that food vice has definitely, how much it was a vice for me, has definitely lowered. So shock horror, I started looking after my sleep and suddenly I wasn't ravenous all the time. But it's just interesting because we all have different vices and there's a lot of shame around certain ones and embarrassment. And I think it's important to mention that because when you do, you go, oh, okay, maybe this is something that's a pleasure of mine, but we all have pleasures and we all have things that we like. And yes, if it becomes something that negatively affects our life, then there are things we can do about it. But there's no shame in having pleasure and enjoyment in things. And sometimes when we're maybe not emotionally regulated or we're not happy in certain areas of our lives, we maybe lean on that vice too much. I really want to stand for making that, I'm not saying normalize it in the sense of it's fine, do nothing about it, but making it more of a point of saying like, we probably have all done that to a degree with certain vices at some point in our lives. And I think if we're able to be open and speak about these things, then they're going to carry less weight, less shame, less guilt, and you're more likely to feel better about it and find ways to help solve that problem for yourself. So we've gone over, is this a one-off anomaly or is it a regular coping mechanism? Because we need to know which one it is. So now that we've got our awareness questions, we know whether it's more of a one-off thing or something that's going to take a bit more work. What do we do? So this is when we get into the tools, and these tools, I've probably spoken about them before, maybe to a degree. I actually have resources for both of these tools. So if there's something we talk about and you want more, or you want a clearer action step, you want some support with it, you want a reminder of it, you want to keep it on your phone, just message me. You can find me, Sally Coaching on Instagram, and I will give this to you. Like, I'm not hoarding anything. I want to help you as much as I can. The first tool is called an if-then tool. So the word if, then, and you'll see why in a second. This tool is especially useful when you've highlighted that time that you struggle with. Say it's the Friday nights. And what we need to do for this tool to work first is I need you to create a list of self-soothing actions that are not to do with food or alcohol. So this means anything you get joy from, and it can be weird, it can be random stuff. As some examples, it might be making a tea, having a bath, going for a walk, phoning a friend, watching a certain something, listening to a certain song. Music for me, that's a really big one for me. Podcasts. It could even be little hobbies you have, paintings, but it's not something that I can tell you because you need to, it's what you like, you know, you could try one of those things and it might not work. So that's why this takes a little bit of trial and error. Let's say you've got 5. So you've got your 5 self-soothing actions. We've then got another word which is part of this tool, and it's called a circuit breaker. What does this mean? So this is something in your environment or a physical object that you can alter or that you will see and touch and feel in that moment. And the purpose of it is that it breaks, it's a circuit breaker. It breaks the habit, the pattern that you typically are doing consciously or unconsciously, typically more likely unconsciously. But the whole point is that it interrupts that pattern and it makes you stop, think, pause, and hopefully take a different action. Not always, but at least it makes you pause and have that time to separate yourself and go, what am I doing right now? And some examples of this can be where you place objects in the room. So maybe it's something by your bedside table. It could be a picture in your room, by your mirror, something you see every day. It could be a reminder on your phone, a screensaver picture on your phone. Maybe you physically put your phone somewhere. You get up and do something. Like, these can be endless. And I just realized I've been covering the mic the whole time, so hopefully that hasn't just ruined the audio. It can be many different things, and what it will be is something linked to the specific situation, right? So if we take it back to that example of the Friday evenings, for me, it might then be something in my kitchen that I physically see on a cupboard somewhere, like a post-it note that I've written a note on. So we've got our list of self-soothing actions, and we've got a list of circuit breakers. And when I say list, this is something I cannot give you. Unless you could message me and give me a specific situation, and I'd be more than happy to help you think of some circuit breakers. But I can't, it's not like the possibilities endless, and it's going to be dependent on the time and situation for you. And what we're then going to do is we're going to form a formula, a framework. And as an example, it might go something like this. If I'm going to emotionally overeat on a Friday because I'm tired and I'm annoyed at something from work, then I will use a post-it note on my cupboard in my kitchen, and I'm going to set a reminder on my phone, and the reminder is going to have a question or a note to help trigger a response or a pause in me, to get me thinking. And this could be something as simple as think about what you're doing. Or it could be the word pause. Or it could be, and this is even better if it is this, I actually do have a list of questions, and they're called crossroad questions. And these are designed to be used for circuit breakers in these if-then tools, because the questions trigger you to pause. They're quite harsh, they're quite brutal, and they get you to think about the things that are important to you, your goals, and what matters to you, and why you're doing the things that you're doing. There's a list of 40 or 30 that I have, so I'm obviously not going to list all of them here. But as an example, off the top of my head, it could be a question: is what I'm doing now to please others, or is it something that I actually want? Is what I'm doing now going to help future me out, or is it just temporarily numbing present me? So questions along those lines. If you're thinking, oh, I want one of those questions, I want to screenshot that, I want to write it down somewhere on a note, again, message me, Sally Coaching on Instagram. More than happy to send these to you. But what you can start to see is that we then build out this if-then tool. This framework becomes very powerful. We've got something to stop us in our tracks, the circuit breaker. We've got a self-soothing action that's not to do with food or alcohol, so something that's comforting, still going to give us a similar comfort to what the snacking or overeating would have done, but it's not as detrimental to our goals. And we've got questions that are going to help us think and connect with why we're doing what we're doing and pause before we take an action. That is a powerful framework, because now you are prepared for the times when you're emotional, you're not regulated, you're tired, you've got a lot on, decision fatigue is high. Of course, you're not going to make logical, perfectly great decisions in that instance. Who is? But with this tool, you almost don't need to, because it's going to help bring us back to why we're doing what we're doing and make the goal-aligned choice an easier option for you in that moment. The next tool is almost, again, I guess a prep one, but it is something that I will continue talking to until the day that I stop coaching, because it will solve a lot of your problems if you are struggling with getting toned, feeling full, cravings, and emotional overeating. Now, I don't want to say it's going to solve all the problems, because obviously that would not be true, but it's going to be necessary. And I'd say everyone that I work with has had to use this tool at some point. and that is called the PF tool. So this is something that I created initially when I was working in a bank and people told me that they didn't have time, they didn't want to track calories, but they wanted to get strong, toned, and lean down a little bit. What do we need to do for that to happen? We just look at it very simply. We need to be eating protein. We need to be eating high volume foods. What does this mean? High volume foods, an example of it could be a lean protein, but high volume foods are your best friends if you are trying to get lean or lose body fat and still be toned to keep your shape and that kind of thing. So what are they? They are things that will fill up your plate for more food, more volume, but they are low in calorie density. So big amount, not so many calories. And when you understand that, it gives you a lot of power with your body composition goals, your health goals, because the great thing about high volume, low calorie dense foods is that they tend to be whole foods. They will be vegetables, they will be fruits, and they will be lean proteins. They'll typically be things that are high in fiber and things that are nutritious. We're ticking a lot of boxes here. So this is why when I say PF tool, what it actually stands for is protein and fiber, shockingly, but they're specific high volume, low calorie dense foods. When you know what your go-to PF foods are for you that you enjoy, it unlocks a lot of simplicity and efficiency for yourself. And the reason why I've put this in an emotional overeating podcast episode is because if you fill up on these foods, you're not going to be as likely to overeat. And one of the biggest problems of evening overeating is that people don't eat enough earlier in the day. They don't have regular meals and then they wonder why they're starving. Similar situation, if you're, like I said earlier, like I did, I blunted my hunger with caffeine. I got so lost in work. Mentally, I was a little bit worried and overthinking things, and I was tired and I hadn't eaten in hours. Like, what do you mean? That's a recipe for overeating. But if you're aware of PF foods and you use this tool and eat those kind of foods, way less likely to then overeat because you are making sure you're full, you're going to get good nutrients in, high fiber foods, and you're going to be hitting your protein. So there is very little downside to using this tool, and there's many benefits. If you're thinking, oh, I want to use that tool, what foods are you talking about? Don't worry, I've got you also. Like I said, I do have a resource for the PF tool. I have a list of food. I've got a video that will show you how you can use it in the best way possible. If you want any of these things, all you need to do is message me the letters PF or just message me and say, hey, I've listened to the podcast. Can I have the resources? And I will be more than happy to send them to you. So I hope you found this useful. I'm going to stop the podcast now. Episode 100 is next. Any requests, please tell me because I don't have any ideas right now. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day and I will speak to you soon.